And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is February the 10th, the 41st day of the year. Just 324 days remain to the year's over with. And for those who didn't manage to catch it, Super Bowls played yesterday, and it was the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles versus the Chiefs. It was a 40-22 blowout. Now, Patrick Mahomes had just 33 passing yards. And despite 3 touchdowns in the second half, a little bit too late. Kansas City Chiefs, as I say, blown out 42-10. A lot of very interesting Super Bowl ads ran. I'm told, though I didn't see it, even the Army had one. Apparently, we've gone back to having an army made of hard-charging, testosterone-fueled warriors versus Bruce and Company. I don't know how long that'll last. The liberal left is determined that our military skips through fields of clover and just has a good old time doing social engineering around the world. Not the case right now, though. Holidays and observances. National Umbrella Day. Teddy Day. Referring to that teddy bear that a lot of us had growing up. World Pulses Day. National Poop Day. At least it has its own day. National Football Hangover Day. I mean, the Super Bowl party was probably epic, but today you're having to pay the price. National Cream Cheese Brownie Day. National Flannel Day. Plimsoll Day. That's the Plimsoll, for those that are not familiar with it, if you don't sail. This day is dedicated to the man that made commercial sailing safer, Samuel Plimsoll. There was a time in England when many commercial vessels were traveling on the river so overfilled with accidents abounded. But with the laws of Mr. Plimsoll champion, now the Plimsoll lines can be found painted on ships all over the world. Well, read up on your sailing, find out what it is if you're not sure. National Home Warranty Day. All the news is fit to print day and some that's not. National Clean Out Your Computer Day. You take off that little side and never know what you're going to find. Oatmeal Monday. Valentismus, which is a celebration said to be full of love and joy. It's a wonderful opportunity to express affection and appreciation for those we hold dear. And of course, the 14th is Valentine's Day. International Cribbage Day. Random Acts of Kindness Day. National Cardiac Rehabilitation Week. Have a Heart for Chained Dogs Week. National Hero Week. Put on your cape and spandex and go flying down the block. International Week of Black Women in the Arts. National Apprenticeship Day. Week. Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week. Tapati Festival. It's a festival on Easter Island, which transforms the island into a celebration of culture and community. Student Volunteering Week, National Salute to Veterans, Patience. Pickle Time Week, Love a Minch Week, National Green Week, Chastity Week, National Marriage Week, Tapati Rapa Nui Festival, another festival from Easter Island. This one goes on, I think, for 2 weeks. It's the most exciting and vibrant celebration on Easter Island. It's held every year in February. It's a 2-week event. Brings the island to life with traditional Polynesian music and dance and competition. Love Data Week, Heart Failure Awareness Week, Homes for Birds Week, International Flirting Week. Royal Hobart Regatta, National Jello Week, Children of Alcoholics Awareness Week, Great American Pizza and Bake, National Secondhand Wardrobe Week, National Kraut and Frankfurter Week, Freelance Writers Appreciation Week. The famous people born in the state: Mia Khalifa, Emma Roberts, Chloe Grace Moretz, Elizabeth Banks, Laura Dern, Robert Wagner, and Yara Shahidi. February 10th is also part of International Vegan Cuisine Month, American Heart Month, National Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, National Snack Food Month, Spay Neuter Awareness Month, National African American Read-In, National Children's Dental Health Month, Human Relations Month, Feline Fixed by 5 Month, National Macadamia Nut Month, Exotic Vegetables and Star Fruit Month, Berry Fresh Month, National Therapeutic Recreation Month, Marijuana Awareness Month, National Goat Yoga Month, Financial Aid Awareness Month, Adopt a Rescued Rabbit Month, National Mend a Broken Heart Month, National Wedding Month, Canned Food Month, North American Inclusion Month, National Black History Month, Renaud's Awareness Month, Renaissance of the Heart Month, Spiritual Teachers Month, Pull Your Sofa Off the Wall Month, National Senior Independence Month, National Laugh Friendly Month, National Enrolled Agents Month, National Care About Your Underwear Month, International Boost Self-Esteem Month, Free Open Source Software Month, From Africa to Virginia Month, National Sweet Potato Month, National Avocado and Banana Month, Fabulous Florida Strawberry Month, National Cancer Prevention Month, Cholangiocarcinoma Awareness Month, Spunky Old Broads Month, National Blobbuster Month, Ethnic Equality Month, National Cat Health Month, Humpback Whale Awareness Month, Dog Training Education Month, National Prevent a Litter Month, Declutter for a Cause Month, Creative Romance Month, An Affair to Remember Month, National Embroidery Month, National Women's Inventors Month, Youth Leadership Month, Haiku Writing Month, Love the Bus Month, Jobs and Golf Month, Celebration of Chocolate Month, now that's one I can get behind, Potato Lovers Month, Barley Month, Wise Health Care Consumer Month, National Self-Check Month, National Condom Month, Pet Dental Health Month, National Parent Leadership Month, Relationship Wellness Month, National Grapefruit Month, Low Vision Awareness Month, National Fasting Month, Return Shopping Carts to the Supermarket Month, Great American Pie Month, National Cherry Month, National Bake for Family Fun Month, National Bird Feeding Month, National Hot Breakfast Month, National Library Lovers Month, and Harley Quinn Month. There's a lot of things being celebrated in February. There's no question about that. Okay. On this date in 1258, the siege of Baghdad ends with the surrender of the last Abbasid caliph to Ilagu Khan, a prince of the Mongol Empire. I think he was a son of Chinggis Khan, who almost conquered the world. 1306, in front of the high altar of Greyfriars Church in Dumfries, Robert the Bruce murders John Crumlin, sparking the revolution in the Wars of Scottish independence. 1355, the St. Scholastica Day riot breaks out in Oxford, England. They have 63 scholars and perhaps 30 locals dead over a period of 2 days. 1502, Vasco da Gama sets sail from Lisbon, Portugal on his second voyage to India. 1567, Lord Darnley, second husband of Mary Queen of Scots, is found strangled following an explosion of the Kirk of Field House in Edinburgh, Scotland. It was a suspected assassination, but never proven. 1712, Uliches of Chioli rebelled against the Spanish Encampaderos. That was a Spanish labor system that rewarded conquerors with the labor of conquered unchristian people. In theory, the conquerors provided the laborers with benefits, including military protection and education. In actual practice, the conquered was subject to conditions that closely resembled instances of forced labor and slavery. It was first established in Spain following the Christian Reconquista, and applied on a much larger scale during the Spanish colonization of the Americas and the Spanish East Indies. Conquered people were considered vassals of the Spanish monarch, and as such, they had very little in the way of rights. 1763, the French and Indian War. Treaty of Paris ends the war, and France cedes Quebec to Great Britain. 1814, Napoleonic Wars. The Battle of Champubert ends in French victory over the Russians and the Prussians. 1840, Queen Victoria of the UK names Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg, marries Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. 1846, the First Anglo-Sikh War. The Battle of Sobraon. British defeat Sikhs in the final battle of the war. 1861, Jefferson Davis is notified by telegraph he's been chosen as provisional president of the Confederate States of America. 1862, American Civil War. A Union naval flotilla destroys the bulk of the Confederate Mosquito Fleet in the Battle of Elizabeth City on the Pasquotank River in North Carolina. 1906, the HMS Dreadnought, the first of a revolutionary new breed of battleships, is christened. 1920, Josef Heller de Hallenberg performs the symbolic wedding of Poland to the sea, celebrating restitution of Polish access to open sea. 1920, about 75% of the population in Zone 1 votes to join Denmark in the 1920 Schleswig plebiscites. 1923, Texas Tech University is founded in Texas Technological College in Lubbock, Texas. 1930, the Vietnam Quoc Dang launches the failed Yen Bao mutiny in hope of overthrowing French protectorate over Vietnam. Didn't quite work out as they planned. 1933, in round 13 of a boxing match in New York City's Madison Square Garden, Primo Carnera knocks out Ernie Schaeff. Schaeff dies 4 days later. 1936, the Second Italo-Abyssinian War. Italian troops launched the Battle of Amba Aradam against Ethiopian defenders. 1939, Spanish Civil War. The Nationalists conclude their conquest of Catalonia and seal the border with France. 1940, Soviet Union begins mass deportations of Polish citizens from occupied eastern Poland to Siberia. 1943, World War II. Attempting to completely lift the siege of Leningrad, the Soviet Red Army engages German troops and Spanish volunteers in the Battle of Krasny Bor. 1947, the Paris peace treaties were signed by Italy, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, Finland, and the Allies of World War II. 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower warns against U.S. intervention in Vietnam. 1962, the Cold War. Captured American U-2 spy plane pilot Gary Powers is exchanged for captured Soviet spy Rudolph Abel. 1964, Melbourne Voyager collision. Aircraft carrier HMAS Melbourne collides with and sinks the destroyer HMAS Voyager off the south coast of New South Wales, Australia. 82 people died in the process. 1967, 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is ratified. 1972, Ras Al Khaimah joins the United Arab Emirates, now making up 7 emirates. 1984, Kenyan soldiers killed an estimated 5,000 ethnic Somali Kenyans in the Wagalia massacre. 1989, Ron Brown's elected chairman of the Democratic National Committee, becoming the first African American to lead a major American political party. In 1996, IBM supercomputer Deep Blue defeats Garry Kasparov in chess for the first time. 2003, France and Belgium break the NATO procedure of silent approval concerning the timing of protective measures for Turkey in case of a possible war with Iraq. 2004, 43 people are killed and 3 are injured when a Fokker 50 crashes near Sarhar National Airport. 2009, communication satellites Iridium-33 and Cosmos 2251 collide in orbit, destroying both. 2013, 36 people are killed and 39 others are injured in a stampede in Allahabad, India, during the Kumbh Mela festival. 2016, South Korea decides to stop the operation of the Kaesong Joint Industrial Complex with North Korea in response to the launch of... Okay, in 2018, 19 people were killed. Excuse me. And 66 injured when a Kulon motor bus double-decker on Route 872 in Hong Kong overturns. 2021, traditional... I don't know what's wrong. Carnival in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil is canceled for the first time because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in 2021, Texas's worst energy infrastructure failure, the 2021 Texas power crisis, starts on this date. Well, that ends. Well, in the news, I guess you all have heard that Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency has unearthed numerous wastes of taxpayer dollars, even though the Democrats, with the help of the federal judiciary, are fighting like hell to keep everything a secret. The taxpayers don't have the right to know, you know. Kristi Noem is saying get rid of FEMA the way it exists today. It's supposed to be there in case of emergencies, but as it showed in this Hurricane Helene, is politically motivated. They would not help anybody who had a sign in their front yard supporting Trump. The DOGE, or Department of Government Efficiency, has gained access to FEMA's sensitive disaster relief data to review its programs. And what they're finding is very disheartening. The sad thing is, if you were a fine, upstanding Democrat, you got supported. If you weren't, you didn't. Well, there's a lot of programs that have been found that are absolutely mind-blowing. I'm going to list a few of those in just a few minutes. President Trump's plan to take over Gaza is not meeting as much resistance in the Middle East as you'd think. Most of the resistance is coming from the Democrats here. And the programs that have popped up where we have been supporting terrorist organizations with taxpayer dollars is absolutely stunning. that we would try to do something like that in the face of verbally we're against them and privately these silly programs support them. President Trump has pulled the security clearance of a lot of people to include former President Biden. The Congress has moved to put limits on non-governmental organizations that aid illegal immigrants. Department of Homeland Security recently cut funding to nonprofits on the basis they're funding illegal immigration. Bills have been submitted in both the House and the Senate to put limits on non-governmental organizations they believe are undermining U.S. immigration laws. Representative Lance Gooden from Republican from Texas is reintroducing the Protecting Federal Funds from Human Trafficking and Smuggling Act. And Senator Bill Hagerty, Republican of Tennessee, is introducing the Fixing Exemptions for Networks Choosing to Enable the Illegal Migration. Hagerty's bill would end tax-exempt status for organizations that help illegal immigrants, requiring exempt organizations to not engage in a pattern of providing assistance, benefits, services, or other support to folks they know are here illegally. For years, non-governmental organizations have exploited taxpayer dollars to facilitate illegal immigration under the guise of humanitarian aid. And while it sounds good, in actuality, it's not. So at least for the next 4 years, there's a lot of problems these NGOs are going to have. Many of these NGOs actually have infrastructure and operations set up in Mexico. And they're helping the illegal immigrants get across the border. They don't believe in the validity of national borders. California probation officers are saying they can't handle the amount of violent ex-cons in that state who are being aided and abetted by elected Democratic officials. When I say Democratic, I mean members of the Democratic Party. All right. We're going to look at some of the programs that DOJ has eliminated. Some of them you just cannot believe. DOJ has claimed more than $1 billion per day in spending cuts. Let's see if we can find that list. A lot of them are under the USAID. And you would thought you were looking at something from a country like Russia as opposed to what's coming out of a U.S. government agency. Democrats are having a fit because a lot of the DOJ personnel are in their early 20s. Now, that's the same bunch of folks that were praising to the moon President Obama's 20-something workers. But apparently what is good for Obama is not good for Trump. Well, let's see. Where is that list? I had it. That's the problem with too much information. Well, looks like I'm not going to be able to find it. Let's go to the Economic Times and see if it's got anything. It's been primarily focused on cutting DEI programs, consulting with about federal buildings that are leased and not being used because everybody's working from home. There's so many USAID programs that have been cut, it's just mind-boggling. The things that we were funding. Okay. List of programs cut by Doge. Well, there have been well, no matter let's see if ABC News has the list. Well, even NOAA, the agency responsible for forecasting the weather, has been a target. Department of Education is in the crosshairs. This government is so big and has so many different agencies, quite often working at cross purposes, that it's amazing how many duplicate programs we're funding. And a big priority has been social engineering. There have been 104 contracts eliminated across 30 federal bodies, with the ceiling value of the agreements reaching $1.2 billion. The House Minority Leader Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York told reporters that diversity, equity, inclusion are American values. And that may well be, but not at the expense of everything else. Well, I'm not going to continue looking for it. I had it up, and while I was in the process of doing the rest of my show, something caused that to come down. Doge just cut all funding to media outlets funded by USAID, and the list of them would blow your mind. Politico got a fortune. And Zelensky complained, he's the president of Ukraine, that of all the money they reported been allotted to them, they didn't get, they were $100 million short. And when you look at the list of payments received by various elected officials, that comes to almost that much. So I'm thinking we're looking at kickbacks. Let's see. I'm going to try one more place. Nope. Well, we'll find it and I'll report it in my next show. All right. We're going to stop at this point. Our news segment. The big news, of course, is the Super Bowl. A lot of new ads ran without DEI and wokeism. The ads are enjoyable again. President Trump got cheered. Taylor Swift got booed. And she's incensed by that. All right. We're going to be talking about our main topic for today. We're going to go back to, in response to an email, I'm going to go back and cover some ghost of dating back to World War II. You know, wars are full of stories and tales. And they're the best place to actually find ghost stories. Now, World War II is no different. Offers a lot of stories of that nature. You know, during the war, Switzerland did its best to remain neutral. But both the Allied and Axis powers courted it. When Germany initiated acts of aggression against that country, the UK sent reinforcements. And that's how a British company of soldiers found themselves stationed in a remote village in the Swiss Alps. They'd been there just a few weeks when the locals started to notice a series of odd happenings. Pieces of wood and tarps would disappear from sheds. Things were stolen out of their homes. And the culmination of these events was a child from the village going missing. At least it was assumed that this was a result of a tragic accident. But then more children disappeared. Now, the only adult to disappear was Private Reginald from the British unit. Vanished out of the barracks and led to a rumor that a monster is lying in the mountains and preying on the village. After Private Reginald vanished, more children disappeared as well. And one night, a figure was seen peering through the window of a house as the soldiers patrolled the town. Well, of course, the soldiers yelled at it, and it took off. They gave chase, reached the edge of the village where the figure appeared to jump into the ground. Well, the soldiers investigated and found a cave hollowed out of the side of a snowdrift. Shots were fired from the cave and returned by the soldiers. After a few minutes of silence, they investigated the cave, and inside they found Private Reginald shot through the heart and surrounded by the half-eaten bodies of 7 children. You got to wonder what was really going on there. And then, of course, on the topic of cannibalism, well, during wars, it's happened several times throughout history. Most cases occur due to dwindling supplies and a need for survival. And for the Indian prisoners of war held by the Japanese in New Guinea and Singapore, it was a culmination of their torture. According to testimonies from POWs for the War Crimes Investigation Commission, cannibalism was conducted under supervision, no less. 2 testimonies state that 19 prisoners were eaten by their Japanese captives. And the reason for that was not survival. Oh no. It was simply because they could. Testimonies state that certain parts were removed from the body and cooked, including the thighs and the liver and the buttocks. There were times when the prisoners were dead when this happened, and other times they were still alive. Well, another occurrence that caused a lot of discussion. A lot of people saw what's referred to as ghost planes during and after the war. These are fighter aircraft that would appear and disappear without a trace. And one of these sightings took place about a year after Pearl Harbor. When the U.S. Army radar started to pick up the signal of an incoming plane, a few pilots were sent out to investigate. And they came back with an amazing story. They had actually seen the plane. It was an American P-40. It looked like it had been through a battle. The plane was said to be covered with bullet holes with the landing gear missing, and the pilot was bloody. Pilots had seen the plane suddenly crash as if it just dropped out of the sky. Well, they went to investigate the crash site. They found a plane with no pilot. So how did a plane with no pilot fly to that location? Never explained. And then, of course, speaking of aerial mysteries, nothing is more mysterious than the blimp mystery of L-8. Ghost planes are not the only aircraft linked to strange happenings in the war. An L-8 blimp, which took off from Treasure Island in California in 1942, has its own mystery. It was on a submarine spotting mission and had a crew of 2. Had a simple mission, but about an hour and a half into the patrol, the pilot radioed they were investigating a possible oil slick in the water. That was a sure sign of a submarine. Well, that was the last transmission they got from blimp L-8. Later that day, the blimp was seen drifting over the coast, sagging in the middle. They finally crashed into a house in Daly City. Rescue team went to the crash site and found the door to the cabin open and the crew missing. Everything was in its correct place. No emergency gear had been used. The crewmen simply vanished and were never found. Then in the Philippines, we have known what is something called the Diplomat Hotel. It's a prime spot for ghost hunters. A lot of banging and screaming is heard in the middle of the night. The terror scene in this building occurred when the Japanese invaded the Philippines. It was once a monastery, and invading forces beheaded all the nuns and clergy when they captured the city. The monastery was turned into a sanatorium for the remainder of the war. And after the war, the use of the building was changed again. It became a hotel. Guests at the hotel often reported seeing black figures and women dressed in white. No explanation for the banging and the screaming. Well, Normandy's the scene of a lot of stories of hauntings. It's got a number of sites World War II you can visit today. And one father decided this would be a good thing to do with his 7-year-old daughter. Now, while in France, nothing strange happened. But in the year after the visit, his daughter started to talk about men and other things she saw while she was there that the father clearly didn't see. She described men pointing guns at her and following her while they toured the bunkers in the area. She described them as hiding behind corners and moving around like soldiers normally would. And while this could normally be written off as an active imagination, she was able to perfectly describe the uniform both sides wore during the war, which there was no other explanation for her being able to do it. Well, from Normandy, let's turn to the strange ship, the SS Alkimos. It's an American ship. It had strange accidents happen. Ship was built for use in the war and sold in Norway, which used it to transport weapons. In 1944, a radio operator was killed by one of the crew who then shot himself. Death was covered up, and the radio operator was claimed to have been killed by enemy fire. Well, following the war, the ship was sold to a Greek shipping company. In 1963, the ship crashed into a reef and then caught fire while it was in for repairs. The ship barely left for Hong Kong for more repairs when the tow line snapped. Well, the Alkimos couldn't be unstuck from that location, though a lot of companies tried to salvage it over the years. And each attempt was met with bad things happening to the crew. One caretaker on board reported hearing footsteps and voices and having very strange feelings. Eventually, the ship was abandoned and sank into the water. Well, let's turn to Islington. During the dark days of the war, Rosina French was a volunteer fire watcher in the London borough of Islington. She couldn't serve on the front lines, but she could check for traveling fires and bomb threats. During one of her shifts, she encountered a supernatural event. While standing at her post, she noticed a shining white figure. At least she assumed it was a person or maybe a gravestone, but the figure was too tall. She later told other people about it. It appeared as if she'd called it. Her post was next to a church and a cemetery, and it's believed the figure was lost souls escaping from the grave. A lot of stories about things like that during the war. Well, during the World War II, the Galapagos Islands was home to a U.S. Army post. According to the legend of the Headless Gringa, the soldier lived on post with his wife. When he found out she was cheating on him, he pushed her off a cliff. And if this wasn't gruesome enough, her head caught between some rocks as she fell, and the momentum of the fall caused her head to snap off. Now, while there are no records of this actually happening, ever since that time, sailors and airmen have had encounters with the Headless Gringa. Most common experience is somebody climbing into their bed and pressing their weight on their chest to suffocate them. That's a way to wake up during the night. Well, in 1991, a young woman was in her newly acquired family home in Colmar, France. And from the attic, she could found a hole in the wall through which she could see another room. But there was no door to that other room. They came back with a flashlight and peered through the hole and saw something in that other room. A young man was sitting on the floor with his knees up to his chest. He turned his head to look at the woman and smiled. Well, at first, she thought she was looking at a real person. And then later, she realized he didn't have any color. Their grandmother later found out the house was a clandestine printing office during the war that printed slogans against the Germans. Well, the Germans routinely tracked down where things like this happened, and those involved did not have happy ends. During World War II, there was actually a ghost army activated in 1944. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops became known as the Ghost Army. It was the first mobile, multimedia tactical deception unit in U.S. Army history. It had an authorized strength of 82 officers and 1,023 men, under the command of Army veteran Colonel Harry Reeder. This unique and top-secret unit was capable of simulating 2 entire divisions, which was about 30,000 men. And he used visual and sonic and radio deception to fool the German forces during World War II. Now, through the National World War II Museum's newest special exhibit entitled Ghost Army, the Combat Con Artist of World War II, you can learn about the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. They were armed with nothing heavier than 50 caliber machine guns, but they took part in 22 large-scale deceptions in Europe from Normandy to the Rhine River. Bulk of the unit arrived in England in May of 44, shortly before D-Day. It was the brainchild of Colonel Billy Harris and Major Ralph Ingersoll, both American military planners based in London. The unit consisted of a carefully selected group of artists and engineers, professional soldiers, and draftees, including such artists as fashion designer Bill Blass, painter Ellsworth Kelly, and photographer Art Kane. A lot of West Point graduates and former Army Specialized Training Program participants were assigned to the 23rd. Said to have one of the highest IQs in the Army with an average of 119. This unit waged war with inflatable tanks and vehicles and fake radio traffic and sound effects and even phony generals. using imagination and illusion to trick the enemy while saving thousands of lives along the way. The 23rd, working with the 3,133rd Signal Service Company in Italy, helped liberate Europe from the grip of Nazi tyranny. Following the war, the soldiers were sworn to secrecy. Records were classified and equipment packed away. Except for one newspaper article right after the war, nobody talked publicly about what happened until a 1985 Smithsonian article. Though knowledge of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troop went public at that point, it was still officially classified until the mid-1990s. It was certainly a fascinating story. You know, it's interesting to note that quite often in a crowd of people, when a ghost event happens, only a few will actually see the event. There was a story told by a New York Times subscriber. Seems that a couple of folks went to University Alma Mater's last homecoming day football game. Now, the father saw the ghost. The son did not. They were seated side by side. But seated between them was the ghost. And it was over Lieutenant Karl Erich Linsdorfer of the 36th Panzer Grenadiers. Officially, the homecoming game's attendance figure that day was 15,421, but that, of course, didn't include everybody. Apparently, other ghosts had returned to their college campus, place where they had enjoyed some of their last best hours on Earth. From there, they returned to their graves. A number of them were on the field and were seen by the individual who was telling the story that I found. There are many stories of things such as this. The problem is finding the people involved. Now, there's a number of undiscussed paranormal mysteries that date to World War II. I talked about phantom planes. During World War II, of course, the skies above the UK buzzed with every make and model of warbird that the Allies and the Axis could produce. Bombers, fighters, and transport made England the world's biggest aircraft carrier. After the war, of course, you'd expect the skies to be much quieter. But dozens of witnesses claimed to have seen World War II-era planes cruising above England. And when the witnesses, of course, raised the alarm, authorities often can't explain the appearance of these ghost planes. And I've written a bunch of books about ghosts and ghost lore. Everything from ghost mules to haunted Mexican restaurant restrooms. But how about an entire beach being haunted by legions of ghosts? Well, that's exactly what a group of holiday vacationers said they encountered while on holiday at the beaches of Dip, site of a bloody botched raid in World War II. During the earlier morning hours of August 4th, a few weeks before the anniversary of the Deep Raid, or Operation Jubilee as it was called, a group of tourists said they heard the sound of cannons and the shouts and screams of soldiers. There was even air cover. Witnesses said they heard the scream of dive bombers. When they went out to investigate the next morning, because this of course all happened in the middle of the night, they found no sign of an armed incursion. Of course, they reported the experience. Normally, ghosts haunt either where they died or where they were the happiest. And you might expect the ghost of German General Erwin Rommel to be sliding through the sands of North Africa or staring out at the English Channel from the cliffs over Omaha Beach or even appearing in Germany. Believe it or not, the best chance of getting a look at the desert fox is in the American South. People claim they've seen this ghost in graveyards in a hotel in Virginia. Supposedly, prior to the war, he made a secret visit to the American to study Civil War battlefields and tactics. Now, historians say their research has shown no evidence of that mission, but the rumor certainly had something to get it started. And there's been quite a number of people who've seen the figure that they believe is Erwin Rommel. Another place that has been the scene of World War II's most violent battles is in the Pacific Theater. I'm referring to Okinawa Island, about 1,000 miles from Tokyo. And that particular battle became very personal. Japanese strategists knew if Americans seized Okinawa, they'd have a base suitable to stage an invasion of Japan's mainland. So they filled the imagination of the island's civilians with tales of American atrocities. When we did invade, thousands of Okinawans jumped off cliffs to their deaths. And visitors to the island say they've heard the beat of footsteps rushing by them to the cliffs, and they've heard screams. Some of them said they heard the footsteps and simultaneously felt a breeze blow by them. Others believe the presence of spirits passed directly through them as the ghosts reenact their last desperate leap. Hundreds of people are said to have jumped to their deaths, based on rumors. Well, our battleships played key offensive and defensive roles during World War II. Many of these ships are brought back to the States where they became both museums to preserve history and floating tributes to the sailors that served on board. And some of those sailors apparently are still around. Moored in the appropriately named Cape Fear River, the USS North Carolina is supposedly haunted with several ghosts. I think I talked about this in a previous show. Witnesses have seen and felt and heard the ghostly presences while touring and working and investigating on board the ship. Now, Carl Jung coined the term synchronicity for events that seem related but aren't causally connected. Others might call these phenomena signs. He must have had a field day during World War II when synchronicities became part of the headlines and war coverage. In one particular case, an advertisement that featured a graphic with dice sporting 12 and 7 seemed to predict Japan's pending attack on Pearl Harbor. In another bizarre case, code names for aspects of D-Day invasion crumped up in a crossword puzzle. After the fact, people wondered whether these were just coincidences or perhaps the manifestations of unknown forces. And let's not forget the mysterious Foo Fighters. Everybody knows the modern UFO era began with Kenneth Arnold in 1947 when he sighted a formation of unidentified craft flying like a saucer if you skipped it across the water over Mount Rainier in Washington. However, during World War II, a number of pilots claimed to see objects flying near or even at their formation. A description of these craft resembled what Arnold saw during his jaunt over the Cascades. Well, a lot of Allied pilots dubbed these weird flying machines Foo Fighters, and many ufologists say these sightings ushered in the first credible reports of UFOs in modern history. No one's ever determined exactly what they were. Well, there have been stories of ghost ships, ghost planes, and even ghost trains, but according to one group of witnesses, there's also a ghost tank said to be still patrolling at the former battlefields of the Eastern Front. According to witnesses, one night while scouring the fields for artifacts from the war, it was a team of war trophy hunters say they distinctly heard the unmistakable clanking of steel treads and the roar of an engine cutting through the otherwise silent darkness. And having commanded APCs, armored personnel carriers, let me tell you, you cannot mistake the sound of a tracked vehicle. There's no other sound like it. Well, they were too scared to investigate. I mean, who wants to take on a Soviet T-34 tank, let alone a ghost Soviet T-34 tank? They did report finding what looked like the twin tracks of some type of vehicle on the ground the next morning. And those tracks were fresh. Now, sometimes the strangest things occur. What do you think about Abraham Lincoln's ghost meeting Winston Churchill? And to make it even stranger, Churchill was nude at the time. Throughout the war, Churchill visited the White House several times, and according to a number of sources, during one such visit, he was stayed in what was now called the Lincoln bedroom. Now, when he got out of the bath, he loved to parade around nude, apparently. He got out of the bath, went into the bedroom, and saw, leaning against the fireplace, Abraham Lincoln. Nobody knows what Lincoln thought about that. But according to the story, Churchill said, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." According to Churchill, Lincoln looked at him and nodded, and like all good former heads of state who are technically dead, slowly faded away. Winston Churchill naked would be enough to make almost anybody fade away. Well, one thing that was very active during the war was secret agents. And they came from all walks of life. Some are military, some are civilian. Only one claimed to be the Antichrist, though. According to historians and paranormal theorists, Aleister Crowley, a magician, occult legend, and master provocateur, served as a secret agent during the war. These experts even suggest that James Bond creator Ian Fleming, an intelligence officer during World War II, enlisted Crowley's magical talents to help cast a spell that eventually lured Rudolf Hess, Adolf Hitler's head henchman, to fly to England on a so-called peace mission. According to another story, Prime Minister Winston Churchill's V for Victory signs action an occult gesture proposed by Aleister Crowley. All that having been said, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk about more stories that are strange and unusual. Until then, Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.